a word of caution I would provide to my fellow Republicans in the state of Nebraska. Omaha is not really blue, right? Omaha is very, very purple. There needs to be something more to it than just we're going to redistrict because it will make it more likely for the Republicans to keep the House. Otherwise, we are going to lose, by we I mean the Republican Party, is going to lose the tens of thousands of voters willing to vote for Republicans, but they won't vote for Donald Trump, and that's our reality.
Educate, inform, inspire. The Dan Parsons Show, a podcast that lifts up instead of tearing down.
Hey, welcome to the Dan Parsons Show. I am your host, Dan Parsons. Coming up on today's show, former Nebraska State Treasurer and State Senator John Murante. But before I introduce John, a shout out to our Friends of Dan, our Patreon support team. If you'd like to support the #1 political podcast in Nebraska with your hard, cold cash, hop on over to patreon.com and look up the Dan Parsons Show and join the fun. Not only will you be supporting the show, you'll also get exclusive bonus content. Okay, here's my interview with John Murante. Enjoy. Well, it is my pleasure to introduce former Nebraska State Treasurer John Murante. John, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me give you a little background. John was the 44th Nebraska State Treasurer, serving from 2019 to 2023. You also served in the Nebraska legislature from 2013 to 2019, representing District 49 in Sarpy County. John resigned as state treasurer in September of 2023 after accepting a position as director of the Nebraska Public Employees Retirement Systems. Then last December, you announced that you were leaving your state job to be a partner in a new lobbying firm, Nebraska Strategies. Did I get all that right, John?
You got it all right.
All right. Well. So what strikes me is
the journey.
Yeah. Well, what strikes me about that, John, is you really are an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, I started really operating my family's small business, Big Fred's, in Omaha, which was started by my grandparents, Big Fred and Rose Bruning, and then got elected to the legislature and became state treasurer, and then really had a great opportunity to run Nebraska's pension system. But then got to join up with really the premier group in Lincoln, as far as I'm concerned, with Ken Shields and Mary Vagelis, who I've worked with for years, and of course in the firm that was started by John Bruning. And so it's a great team, and it's been a great couple of years.
That's great, John. Yeah, it's already been 2 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and you did some great work. I'll just brag on you a little bit with that retirement system. I mean, that was a big job, and it's not one of those jobs that maybe gets a lot of attention, but my goodness, is it important? So talk about that. Brag on yourself. That was a big dang deal.
That was a unique experience, but something that was very, very important. Dan, you've known me for a long time, since I was in high school, I believe, is when we first met. So I've always had the belief that I've always had a passion for the public policy of the state of Nebraska. And I've always had the philosophy of I'll go where I'm needed. I've told people like you and policymakers in Nebraska for years, I'll go where I'm needed. And at that point, Nebraska really needed somebody to run the pension systems, Nebraska retirement systems, because they were first in director search chaos. Yeah. But second, they were staring down the door of not having a director while the state was assuming control of the Omaha school pension.
Yes.
So we had a very small window in the state to ensure that we had an orderly transition of the Omaha school pension from Omaha administration to the state administration that had to be done right. So it wasn't, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, is running the retirement system in your future, I wouldn't have said that was part of the plan, but that's where I was needed at the time, and that's where I was able to go. And when we successfully transferred the Omaha school pension over to state administration, then it was time, I think, really where I could best, where the state needed me at that point, was to be in the rotunda working on the important public policy of the state of Nebraska there with a great team that we have at Nebraska Strategies.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Ken Shields, also a former state senator from
Yep.
Ogallala. By the way, I was just out in Ogallala. I shouldn't say it. No, you said it earlier, how long I've known you since high school. I had my 45th high school class reunion out in Ogallala a few
Good
weeks
for
ago.
you.
So anyway.
That's right. It's a beautiful town. We enjoy. I try to get out to Lake McConaughey as much as I possibly can.
It's so great.
Keith County people are great. Yep.
It is. I don't, my family's moved away and I don't get out there much anymore, but yeah, it is a great experience.
And it's growing. I tell you what.
It is.
What Ken Shields has been able to do out there has been absolutely breathtaking. The appropriations that he's received for the economic development of Keith County is really remarkable.
Yeah, because it was kind of on the rocks for a while. I mean, after I left town, a lot of other people left town and never came back.
They should get you to move back.
I don't know if there's any correlation there, but no, it was impressive. Main Street, lots of activity, lots of restaurants and shops, and yeah, it was impressive. Anyway, my ties to Western Nebraska. I still, I grew up here in Lincoln most of my life. My family moved out there about middle school age. And so, yeah, still have a fond memories of Western Nebraska.
Country.
It is.
Everyone should, if you're a Nebraskan and haven't had the opportunity to go out there, I strongly recommend it.
Amen. Well, John, let me finish this discussion about your path, because it has been a fascinating path, from state legislator to the executive branch, and then to the state treasurer, and then the executive branch and running an agency, and now back to the private sector. What lessons, or maybe what of value to what you're doing now, have you learned in that process through those years?
Sure, I learned a couple of things. First of all, and I had a mentor, Walt Radcliffe, and I know you know Walt very well, and he taught me a lot of important lessons. But, in this business, your word is your bond.
Yep.
You're only as good as you. Every day we're going to be dealing with a different subject matter, sometimes multiple subject matters on the same day.
Yep.
Difference in the cast of characters is kind of the same. There isn't that much turnover in state government. There's a lot of the same personalities. And so keeping your integrity and making sure that people know that when you say something, you're going to keep your word. That's a lesson that Walt taught me, and that I really try and live by. And then I think just my philosophy is something that I really try and encourage younger folks to get involved, because I had a lot of great mentors who encouraged me to get involved at a young age. And so I try to always remember that, and to remember there's really nothing in this state that can't be accomplished, especially if you've got two people with differing viewpoints on things. Maybe they come from differing parties. There's no limit to what we can accomplish if we just drop the partisanship from time to time and move the state forward in what's in the best interest of the people. Yeah,
that's exactly right. Well, that's why I wanted to have you on, John, because that is all true. First of all, we miss Walt tremendously. I had the pleasure of interviewing him just not too long before he passed, and so anyway, a lot of history and a lot of knowledge with Walt Radcliffe, and so I'm glad to see that you're carrying on in the lobby world, and Walt, I know, would be proud of that. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I asked John, other than to get caught up, thank you for that, to talk about redistricting. It's a topic that's come up here in the last few weeks nationally. Everybody's talked about it. The past few weeks, members of Congress, and here's why it's important. Just a little primer for our audience. Members of Congress, state legislators, and many county and municipal offices are elected by voters grouped into districts. But populations change, right? Some districts gain residents, others lose. And districts also may change demographically. And so that's why district boundaries are redrawn every 10 years to ensure that each district has about the same number of people, and that districts are reflective and representative of the electorate. So why does this matter now? Why is this a topic now? Well, redistricting affects political power, plain and simple. It determines which party controls Congress in state and local governments across the country. So obviously, with the 2026 midterm elections on the horizon, who controls Congress hangs in the balance. So let me get us caught up. Just Monday, just a few days ago, the Texas House of Representatives Redistricting Committee voted a bill with proposed new congressional maps out of committee. The Texas House reached a quorum earlier this week after the Democrats returned to Austin, ending a 2-week standoff with Republicans who proposed over the proposed congressional maps, potentially clearing the way for Republicans to approve changes that could net Republicans in Texas as many as 5 new House seats next year. President Trump obviously has weighed in and encouraged this, and he pushed the Republicans in Texas to redraw their maps, along with Governor Greg Abbott calling a special session to take up redistricting. And the president tweeted out, or whatever platform we call it now, on Monday, urging the legislatures to pass the new maps ASAP. So that's where we're at. Talk a little bit about your history, because back in 2016, Republican State Senator John Murante and Democratic State Senator Heath Mello joined forces to pass a bill that would have created an independent commission here in Nebraska to deal with redrawing congressional and state legislative districts after each census. First of all, did I get that right from your perspective?
Yep. No,
and talk a little bit about that effort now, clear back when you were in the legislature, to come up with a more bipartisan effort on this redistricting.
Sure. So what I think Senator Mello and I definitely agreed upon was, when it comes to redistricting, at the end of the day, as believers in democracy, redistricting is nothing more than a set of public policy proposals and issues. And those are best settled. Those questions are best answered when redistricting is not actually taking place. So you mentioned the year 2016. So we're right in the middle of a redistricting of a 10-year period. So we're completely insulated. Heath and I both knew at the time we wouldn't be around for the next redistricting because of term limits. But we did understand that these questions ultimately need to be decided by policymakers who are accountable to the people. And that fundamentally is what democracy is all about. But I think we also agreed that when it comes to the actual implementation of those policies, who's physically going to be drawing the maps, that having a layer removed between the legislators who created the policies and the cartographers who are physically going to the map room and drawing the map, it was good to have a separation there. And so that was the idea fundamentally that we came up with. And I hate to say it, it's not the most exciting thing to say, but the reality is the majority of redistricting principles and policies are very boring in nature. Right. They're not exciting. And I could give you examples of serious, important redistricting principles that should be codified into law, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, it's not going to trend on Twitter. These are issues that are kind of wonkish in nature, yeah. and really ought to be decided when there isn't by legislators who don't have an axe to grind, who didn't have my district wouldn't have impacted my life one way or the other. How that ended up being drawn. So that was our view, and I think a bill like that made a lot of sense in Nebraska.
The final tally, according to my notes, 29-15. So really passed. That's fairly convincingly.
That's right.
And the commission would have included 5 individuals who are members of the party whose gubernatorial candidate won the previous election, and then 4 individuals whose party came in second. Unfortunately, Governor Ricketts at the time, vetoed your bill and said it did not become law. And I think there was some as I read through old newspaper stories, there was some question of constitutionality. Of course, that's always an excuse of why to
Any
veto
bill somebody doesn't
legislation.
like is unconstitutional.
That's
In this
right.
case, I do think after speaking with the administration and the Attorney General's office, there was a constitutionally suspect provision in the bill which dealt with whether the legislature would be able to amend a map that was submitted to it by this independent redistricting commission. The proposal prohibited amendments to that, and it's suspect as to whether a law could prohibit a future legislature from amending a bill in front of the legislature.
Yeah.
So I kind of got that it wasn't just politics. There was an actual question that was raised, and I wish it would have been raised prior to the veto.
Right. Yeah. Something you could have fixed.
History is what it is.
So I didn't go back and do any further history. Has there been any attempts since then to pass anything similar in Nebraska?
I know bills have been introduced, but I don't know that anything's made it out of committee or been prioritized that has gotten legs since then. Yeah. But of course, at the same time, it was then they started getting the problem that we were attempting to inoculate ourselves from, which was the next year comes and now you're getting closer and closer to the next redistricting. And instead of people looking at these proposals through a dispassionate lens, understanding it wouldn't impact any particular legislator's reelection specifically, then it's just started getting complicated, and they moved on to actually doing the redistricting in 2021.
Yeah. Well, let me catch our audience up and I know our audience is following this because I'm hearing from them, but here's the arms race that's going on. So I described what's going on in Texas. That looks like it's headed in the direction that the president wants. Meanwhile, Democrat state legislators in California formally unveiled their proposed legislation to get new congressional maps on the ballot in November, saying that it would be a counter to Texas. California lawmakers said their effort would be a constitutional amendment, so they put it on the ballot, that would include maps as well as affirmation for the state's independent redistricting commission and language that triggers new maps only if other states move forward with their mid-decade redistricting. So here we go. It's an arms race.
Yeah.
And Juan Solanas from the Nebraska Examiner reported earlier this month that Nebraska could join this national mid-decade redistricting fight. U.S. Representative Don Bacon confirmed to the Examiner that national and state conversations are happening about Cornhusker state legislators potentially redrawing the Omaha-based 2nd Congressional District, though he emphasized, according to Juan's reporting, that it was, quote, nothing serious yet. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you have any insights on if you've heard any rumblings about Nebraska, or
there's the rumors that are going about there. I think we do need to put a little bit of an asterisk on this because California and Texas are very, very different from Nebraska in Absolutely. A lot of ways. Yeah. And one of them is we only have 3 members of Congress. Right. When you have dozens, it's a little bit easy to adjust the maps midway through a 10-year census process and not have it be as conspicuous. You know, a word of caution I would provide to my fellow Republicans in the state of Nebraska, it's that first, Omaha is not really blue, right? Omaha is very, very purple. Omaha was purple 50 years ago, and Omaha is going to be purple 50 years from now, right? That is just the way it works. It was Peter Hoagland was elected, and then 1994 comes along, and it's the Republican Revolution, and John Christensen gets elected. And this is the story of Omaha and the 2nd Congressional District that goes back decades. And the reality is, from a political perspective, as someone who represented suburban Omaha in the state legislature, is that there are literally tens of thousands of voters who went to the polls and voted for either Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, and for Don Bacon, and for Senator Murray, and for a whole slew of other Republicans down the ticket. So clearly, the second district has a Donald Trump problem. There are thousands of voters who do not like Donald Trump very much. That does not make them Democrats. And if you want those folks to show up to the polls and vote for people like Murray, we have to continue to appeal to them as Republicans. But I think having there needs to be something more to it than just we're going to redistrict because it will make it more likely for the Republicans to keep the House in 2026. There needs to be more to it than that. Otherwise, we are going to lose. By we, I mean the Republican Party is going to lose the tens of thousands of voters who are out there to vote. They're willing to vote for Republicans, but they won't vote for Donald Trump, and that's our reality. So I don't see any reason why it's in the long-term best interests of Republicans in Nebraska to alienate those voters. It just, to me, it is not in the long-term best interest of the Republican Party of Nebraska.
Well, that's well put, John. And by the way, I love that you're a nerd about political history. It just reminded me of why we've been friends for so many years, because I love it. And that's not even taking into consideration the continued growth of independent voters in Nebraska.
That's right. And that's one thing that's also true. Like I get the point. And there are a couple data points that are correct, but I think sometimes folks reach the wrong conclusion, which is that Douglas and Lancaster County are growing quickly, and that's true. And Douglas and Lancaster County have the highest concentration of Democrat voters in the state of Nebraska. Two things that are true. That does not mean that the state of Nebraska is getting bluer. If the data shows that the percentage of this state that are registered Republicans has been floating right at around 50% for decades. That's nothing new. But if you asked the state Senate, and probably between me, Andrew LaGrone, and Bob Anderson and Gretna, we're the best to testify to this. If you knocked on 1,000 doors in Sarpy County, you're going to see Ogallala high school t-shirts. You're going to see Holdridge high school t-shirts. Right. Because the state is growing in population, but just barely. Yep. And it's true that Omaha is growing in population, but a lot of that population growth is from Western Nebraska. So those Western Nebraskans don't move to the 2nd Congressional District and then suddenly become Democrats. That's just the population shift that we're seeing taking place. So I don't see the 2nd District as being substantially bluer than it was, say, when I worked for Lee Terry in 1998 and 2000. It's just the population shift. That's how they're shifting. And that's the political reality of the state of Nebraska right now. And like everywhere else in the country, Donald Trump has hemorrhaged suburban voters, especially college-educated suburban women, but he's picking up rural voters, and that's the reality of the political dynamic in Nebraska and across the country.
Well, and as we continue, as those demographics continue to change, and we have more Hispanic voters in Nebraska than we've ever had before, and so those demographics are on the trajectory of continuing to change. Actually, in the United States, I mean, all of those demographics are trending differently, and so those traditional red and blue camps are changing.
They are. But Dan, I'll tell you what, we worked together on that 2000 Senate race for Don Stenberg.
That's right.
If you'd have told us on election morning that we would have places like Colfax County would be in the bag, it'd be a Republican county, and Grand Island would be in the bag, it'd be a Republican county, we'd have said, well, we won that. Again, that's the end of the election. If we're winning places like that, then we're going to win the election. Well, now that's the reality. Right now, the reality is 90 counties in this state are reliably red, and one's purple, one's reliably blue, and one goes back and forth a little bit too. But that's the reality of the political dynamics, and I just don't see through redistricting that I think there's a lot of danger going down that road. I'll put that like that. In the state of Nebraska, there is unique danger going down that road.
Still the closest Senate race in Nebraska history, right?
Still stings every now and again. Still stings.
I've become friends with Ben Nelson since then.
Oh, he's a great guy. Yeah, don't get me wrong. But
yeah.
That was a rough election night.
Yeah. Fascinating. Yeah. We're talking about the Stenberg-Nelson Senate race in 2000. That was still to this day, closest Senate race in Nebraska history that Nelson eked out. Because we were winning when the polls closed at 10 o'clock. Right. We were getting ready. I was wondering where the champagne was.
Over at the Nelson headquarters.
That's right. That's where it stayed. We'll talk a little bit more about this national arms race, John, with your deep understanding of this issue and your vast knowledge about demographics and political history. Where does this end? I mean, we're talking about, it looks like Texas is going to pass that. Looks like California, and they're going to spend millions of dollars on this special election coming up. Or maybe it's not the special election. It would be their regular November election, I think, is when it would be on the ballot. But it would be a CA, a constitutional amendment that would bring another 5 or 7 Democrats elected or districts in California, kind of equaling what Texas is doing. Who's next? I mean, where does this end, and how is this healthy for our nation? I just don't.
I don't think that it is healthy, and I don't think that it is likely to end anytime soon. I do think there's. So this is where I know I'm going to simultaneously bore your listeners and enrage both sides, regardless of where they.
That's why you're here, brother. Bring it.
So I would say so. Back up. I'll give you another line item in my resume, which was I was the national co-chair of the Redistricting Task Force of the National Conference of State Legislatures. So I was the Republican representative, and a state senator, Senator Ivy Soto from New Mexico, was my Democrat colleague. And so I had a chance to talk with redistricting policymakers from around the country about their thoughts behind it. And it really is something Nebraskans, a lot of what other states deal with, Nebraskans just have no familiarity with. Right? Like the idea of a majority minority district in Omaha that is by way of tradition just protected. Like you get rid of Ernie Chambers in North Omaha through redistricting, but it was a non-starter. Never in Nebraska's history was that ever considered, at least as far as I have been able to see in the record and talk of the folks who were involved in those redistricting wars in decades past. That was just always taken for granted. There is a district of minority voters in North Omaha, and they're going to have their own district, and we're not going to touch that. What you see in the Deep South, we're not going there. That's just our reality in Nebraska. That's not true in a lot of places.
Right.
That history isn't really there. So we do have a nonpartisan legislature,
yep.
And although partisanship seeps in from time to time, we are still so insulated compared to what the partisan legislatures across the country have that it's almost difficult to speak redistricting policy when this is what you know, and you see the history of the entire Deep South, and it's an apples to oranges comparison.
Yep, 100%. I don't know where it ends. I don't know where, part of the theme of this show for the past year is truth over tribalism. And, this got to pick a team, red team, blue team until you die. And it just, and again, from a public policy standpoint, we're not getting shit done. That's the bottom line for me anyway. Mm-hmm. We're just, and it's not going to end. I mean, let's say that, anytime in midterm elections, in presidential, in an off presidential year, the party out of power gains seats. And so that's just inevitable. Yep. And it's looking like it might be historically that way, could be this coming year. And so this thought that we're going to try to stem that tide, the Republicans thought that we're going to stem that tide by, gerrymandering these districts. A, I don't think it's going to work, and B, this tide that is coming, we'll see. I mean, obviously we're a long ways from November of 26,
Right.
but anyway, you're
I
just.
don't see it. I don't see it dying down. But I will say, I promised you that I would offend both Republicans and Democrats on your show. But there is a reality that the Republican critique that if we get into a war of red state versus blue states redistricting, there's not much left for Democrats to gerrymander because they've already done it. There is an element of truth to that. There is not, if all the red states and all the blue states go into their corners and start redistricting and gerrymandering, the Republicans have more to gain from that because they're just, if you look between the coasts, there aren't that many members of Congress. There aren't that many Democrat members of Congress there. There's just not that much left. So I am somewhat sympathetic towards now we're outraged by gerrymandering. It's just when we saw the Illinois maps from 2021 where somehow Gary, Indiana, and St. Louis are connected with one thin strip, that's like, there's nobody who's completely innocent in this discussion either. Let's put it that way.
What hopes are there of reforming this system? And from your perspective, your deep history, is that the most important thing we can do right now to help mend this divide that we have, or are there other solutions that we should be looking at? To me, it comes down to leadership. But anyway, from your perspective.
I think leadership is the number one issue. It's the first thing we have to do is stop folks from, if you had leaders who would stand up and say, yeah, we can do something, but just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Yep.
That takes courage. It takes far more courage to stand up to your own side, regardless of which side that is, than it does fighting with the other side. It takes no courage whatsoever to fight with the other side. That's just what you're supposed to do, right? That's bread and butter. So I think that leadership is the number one issue, and there needs to be a very good reason to do this sort of redistricting, I believe, midway through a 10-year cycle without a census. Give me some plausible rationale beyond just it'll help our side win to make it palatable, because I don't see that being the right thing to do, but B, I don't even see it being in the long run a winner of an issue. I think you're going to alienate too many people by doing that.
Yeah. Well, and last couple minutes here we have left, John. I told you this would go fast. Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about the upcoming legislative session? I know obviously that's your bread and butter now, and the state seems to be in a bit of a fix financially, although we got some good numbers here earlier this week. It looks like the tax receipts are coming in better than expected. But anyway, just your analysis of the upcoming legislative session.
So the tax receipts are coming up better than expected, which is a relief, I think, to everyone. I would say, with respect to the next session, I really wish our policymakers would. I believe there are two truths, or there are a number of truths when it comes to Nebraska fiscal policy. I do believe that property taxes are the number one issue facing the state of Nebraska. I believe that. I've been out in all 93 counties, and that's true everywhere. That's the majority opinion everywhere. There is no way to increase sin taxes enough to lower property taxes. There is no way we are not going to be able to raise other taxes enough to lower property taxes appreciably. So we have to start talking reality, that there's not a painless solution to that crisis, and it sure is not coming from taxation on cigarettes. I'm not a smoker. I've never bought a cigarette in my life, so it might be easy to say, well, that's a tax somebody else pays, so go ahead and raise it. But those are not that is not a road that leads to property tax relief. It's not even a road that really leads to a sustainable budgeting. If you're a fiscal conservative, that's not the way to go about doing it. Sin taxes, it's just not, that's not how you shrink the size and scope of government. If anything, it does the exact opposite over the long run. So I think that is a policy perspective that was embraced, I think, within the Capitol for a very long time. I think it is still, but it's a message, I think, that really needs to get out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, John Murante, it's great to catch up. Congratulations on the lobby firm. Let us know if we can be of any help. You got any clients that want to talk public policy? We always are interested in that. So, especially in your spirit of bipartisanship, because that's how shit gets done.
That's right. Absolutely. And I said it before, but I'll say it again. There really is no limit to what can be done in this state legislature or any other, as long as you're willing to drop the partisanship and work across the aisle to move the state forward. There really is no limit to what can be accomplished.
Very good. Hey, say hi to your lovely family, and I appreciate your time, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks, John, for joining me on the show today. Your expertise and knowledge about Nebraska politics is impressive. Thanks so much. Hey, don't forget to show us some love and hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Thanks to the Parsons team who made this show possible. Chase Porter, our executive producer. Ike Samanis, producer and graphic design. Penology, Tech Solutions, for their technical help and equipment. And Kim Remington, Parsons PR's Director of Operations. And thanks to each of you for your support and for tuning in. Now go do good things. I'm Dan Parsons.